Now we're talking. Oh dear. Well, where's my clip? Where's my clip? This is a big barbel. Look at that. Whoa! Unbelievable fishing. Unbelievable fishing. What started out as a bream feature has turned into a real big fish bonanza, and I have had one of the best days fishing that I could possibly hope for on this fantastic piece of water. So it's my incredibly tough task today to bring you to one of the best rivers that I've ever fished, the River Trent, in search of some big river bream. Now, over the last few years, we've done some nice videos on the Trent where we've looked at how to approach river feeder fishing, what sort of species to fish for, getting bites, how we can change things up. Today's slightly different. We're specifically targeting a type of fish today in bream. Now, let me give you some sort of things to look for when you go in for bream pegs. First of all, if there's any matches or competitions on the venues of the rivers near you, make sure you get a little bit of information from them, because bream do move around in shoals, so it's good to see where a few bream have been caught in the matches. It gives you an idea that there's a few in the area. You don't have to sit on the one peg, but in the area you know there's a few bream, you've got something to work for. You know, try and get a bit of a vibe. And when you get to the river itself, one of the things you're looking for is maybe a slightly deeper area of the river. You know, once we get into like July, August, September, and all the water starts to like even out in temperature, the fish, the bream, will usually sit in those deeper areas, mainly because they want a little bit more cover over their heads if they're going to feed, because naturally the River Trent is generally quite clear, unless you get a lot of heavy rain. Obviously it colours up in flood, which is fantastic bream conditions and maybe one for another day. This is summertime. We haven't really had heavy rain. Of course it seems to rain a little bit every day these days, but no heavy rain. The water clarity is, you know, I can see probably 2.5 to 3 foot into this water, so I'm going to want some sort of depth over the top of the fish in order to give them some confidence and catch them. Ideally, I don't really want to be looking for anywhere where I've got a fish too far out, so what I'm always thinking about is somewhere where the flow is nice and close to me. So as the river bends round, obviously the flow will follow the bend of the river. It won't be on the what I call the inside. It depends which way I suppose you're looking at it, but effectively if it was a racetrack, it'd be the outside line. That's where that you're talking about the water pushes to that bank, and generally speaking that water is a little bit deeper. So this is the sort of scenario that I've got here today. I've got one of the deeper areas of the river, and I know that the depth here sort of like maxes out sort of 15-16 meters out. But naturally, when you get those sort of areas, it can be a little bit snaggy, but this is all great for bream fishing. This is where bream like to hang out. Now, when you're targeting bream, for me, the feeder is the natural decision, because of course, you want to keep your bait as static as possible. You want to nail your bait down to the bottom for the bream to come down and take it and get that lovely bite. So a feeder is obviously the way I would go about it. Now, what I'm going to do is all I've done is threaded up my rod. I'm going to make the rig for you. I'm going to talk about what sort of tackle you might need, and that'll give you a good idea how you can approach the river, you know, where you like to go fishing. So first of all, I've got a 12-foot rod. I've got a 12-foot Superior X. Personally, I haven't used a nicer rod for fishing on a river. I believe 12 foot to be the minimum river fishing rod length, in my opinion. I don't get on with short rods on rivers, mainly because rivers are wild. You can see today I've had to elevate myself up slightly. I could be wanting to get my rod nice and high. I want to keep my line off the water to pick up the flow a little bit more directly. So the lower and shorter I've got my rod, it's a little bit too weak for me. So I like a nice 12-foot rod where I've got plenty of strength in the lower half of the rod as a minimum. So this 12-foot Superior X does a great job. It's got a 2-ounce tip in it. Again, for any harder flowing river, I don't go less than a 2-ounce tip. I mean, you could put a 2.5 ounce, 3-ounce tip in, but for me, once the tip starts to bend over, it's doing its job. What I don't want is something really soft in the end of the tip. Trust me, when I chuck out today, this rod will be bent right through to the carrier of the rod. So all the tip is there for is almost like a spring back indicator. And we'll talk about that once we get fishing. On the reel, which is of course the ever faithful Extremity 520, got some 6 pound mono. Now, if I'm fishing for bigger fish on river, bream, barbel, carp, oh, that'd be nice, but those sort of fish on a river, chub, it's mono for me the whole way. I love fishing with braid when I'm fishing for bites and all sorts of different fish, but I just feel when I'm fishing with mono, I've got that extra security, everything's more durable, and I want to keep everything as simple as possible. Now, because I'm fishing for bream and not really targeting barbel or anything like that, I've got like a balanced mono. I've got 023 sinking feeder mono, which is 6 pound in strength. So that for me is going to be a perfect mono for dealing with the sort of conditions I'm faced with today. And I've not got a shock leader or anything like that. And I've literally, because I've got 023, I don't need to put like a 10 pound shock leader on. I'm not casting a million miles. If I was casting to the far bank here, I would need a shock leader. But generally speaking, anything up to about 30 meters, you can just fish the mono straight through, so it's very easy to do. So once you've threaded your mono on, your river rig could not be any easier in my opinion. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this main line, and I've got with me here some stops, okay? These are the medium stops. We also do a small, extra small, large. Take your choice. I like the smalls and the mediums are great. Extra smalls for a different type of rig. So for me, the river rig, the medium's great. And I'll explain why I think these are so good. So first job is to thread one stop on your line and just thread it up the line like so, okay? And then you want to be taking a little link swivel, all right? Now, a link swivel is there for us to attach our feeder, so that's going to go on the line next. Dead easy like so. And then these stops come with 3 on a thing. You want the remaining 2 stops threaded on the line to hold that link swivel on. So if I just pull those on like so, nice and steady, perfect. So they are now on the line. So what I've got in effect, if you look here, is I've got the link swivel literally moving between 2 stops at the bottom and 1 above. Now I usually set this gap to about an inch, inch and a half, something like that. Little bit of movement to give me my bite, but this is what causes, as the fish pulls down on this line, goes like this, pulls your tip, and it goes dunk against that stop. That stop, the weight of the feeder, the fish hooks itself, dislodges the feeder, and your fish is shaking off down the river. Now, what I like to do, whenever you're using these types of stops, and this is a nice little piece of advice, if they move around quite a bit, if you move them up and down, they tend to loosen a little bit. So I actually want to move this up and down a couple of times up the line, right? And just, it's not going to become loose, but just loosen it up a little bit. And the reason I'm doing that is because sometimes, and today's a good example, the bottom's a little bit snaggy. Sometimes you can snag your feeder and the fish is trying to break free. And as it tries to break free, it'll actually pull your stop up the line a little bit, and it'll save your hook length getting broken off. So by having a stop rather than having your link swivel in a loop, you've got a little bit of freedom there, and I don't want that to be too tight. I don't want this stop to be too tight on the line. I want it to move a little bit, and I'll just drag it down. All I want it to do is act as a way to hook the fish. So that's absolutely perfect for me. All right, and then the next step I do, which I think is really important, and it's so easy. I obviously need something to attach my hook length to. So all I do is move the stops right up the line to where I want them, and I just tie a simple loop. Now, I don't really want the loop to be too big or too small, so I'm going for, like, again, about 1.5 inches, and I'm just going to tie that twice through itself, wet that down. I've done that to about 1 inch, that's great. And then literally I'm going to clip that off, make sure I look after my line, bring my stops down to the end, bring that one back down on top, and you can see there, look, all I've got is these stops with a loop beneath it. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hook length on that loop once I start fishing. Literally going to loop my hook length through, and put it on, and I'll show you how we do that in a bit. But it's brilliant. I mean, it does not get any easier. I want as minimal as possible on my line. I think that's very, very important. So once I've got myself or my rig set up, I'm going to swivel around on my box, because we need to do a little bit of casting out into the river and find where we're going to fish. Right, so let me tell you a little bit about this bit where I'm fishing today. This is a very deep area of the river. I would say, at a guess, it's got to be 20 foot deep. So that is a deep bit of the River Trent, to be fair. That means all the depth being on the inside, if I'm expecting 20 foot close and I'm sat on the bank here, between me and where I'm fishing must be very rocky and steep, very nasty, very like snaggy, old branches, bits, things like that. So I've got to think a little bit. If I fish too close, I'm not going to be able to get my feeder and my rod and everything up and get the fish up above the snags. If I fish too far out, I'm almost going out into the middle of the river when I'm sure the fish will be close to this sort of snaggy bank, this shelf. They love a bit of a feature. So what I'm looking for today is I'm looking to probably chuck this about 15 to 18 meters. So I'm just going to have a couple of chucks and make sure I'm happy with where I'm fishing. Now, I'm a bit nervous because I don't really want to drag the bomb about too much, because I know what it can be like here. I know there's like lots of bits on the bottom, lots of rocks on the bottom. If you're where you're going fishing, drag the bomb about a little bit. Now, if you get sort of snagged up very easily, you know it's going to be quite snaggy. You're going to have to try and find somewhere else to fish, take other precautions. So I'm going to show you what I do to try to sort of tackle the river, if you like. So I've got 1.5 ounce bomb on. Now I've clipped this up at around 18 meters, well 18 meters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast out, I'm going to bring my rod right round to the side to give myself a little bit of slack line, because when I'm fishing and I'm using the bow, that's what I'm going to need to do. So I want to cast as if I'm fishing. So a little cast to the bomb, straight out in front of myself, bring the rod round to the side, and I'm just counting it down in my head. It was about 5 or 6 seconds. Then I like to put my rod on the rest, as if I'm fishing. I like to see how the line tightens up in the flow. Is there a strong flow, weak flow? And you can actually see on my tip that it's got a nice little gentle bend in it, and it's not bouncing back and forward, it's keeping nice and still. Even when that boat went through there's an odd little wave, but that bomb is absolutely nailed on the bottom. So that means, one, where I'm fishing, I know that I can hold the bottom nice and comfortably. Two, when I brought my rod around to the side, that's going to be more than enough slack line to hold the bottom. I could even tighten it up a little bit more. And now all I need to do is just pick the bomb up steadily. And what I'm looking for is I don't want the bomb to be wedged in the bottom. I'm hoping when I pick up, it's just going to almost bump along a little bit, and then I'm going to wind the bomb in quite quickly up in the water, because I don't want to wind the bomb into this snaggy shelf. So if I just pick it up nice and steady, does it come out? Yes, it does. So I can wind it out, and I can feel as I'm winding the line is trying to catch in little bits of different stuff on the way down. So if I start getting snagged there, I might even push a little bit further out to try to cope with it. But I'll just have one more go, chuck it out, rod down to the side, let it hit the bottom. I always bring the rod to the same point. This time I'm actually going to do one turn on the reel to pick up a little bit of the slack line, just to see if that still holds. Yes, it does. It's holding very nicely. So again, I'm just going to pick the bomb up. Does it come out the bottom? Yes, it does. I can feel it bouncing on a little stone or two, and then I'm winding it nice and quickly, keeping everything nice and high to make sure I don't drag it. You can imagine this big heavy bomb, I can actually feel it's a bit chipped. So it's obviously bouncing off a few rocks between me and there. So, you know, these are the things that you've got to think about. This is a particularly challenging peg. You might have something that's a little bit smoother, a little bit more easy to deal with. But once you've decided where you're going to fish, Of course, the most important thing is getting some bait into the peg. So let's have a little look at the bait I've brought, and then we'll talk a little bit about my feeder and how we're going to kick off the peg. So when I'm bream fishing, and this for me is the big difference over the things that I've talked to you about in the past. The first thing is ground bait choice. Now, for me, on any river where you're targeting big bream, or bream should I say, and when I say a bream, for me that's anything over like 2.5, 3 pound. I think if you're under 2 pound, it's skimmers and it might be a slightly different style of fishing, but I'm looking for those brown, lumpy fish that are going to nod around. They're a little bit less, what's the way? They're not as finicky with hooks and line and stuff like that, and everything needs to be a little bit more robust, big fish style. And this river, the River Trent, sees a lot of pellets, so for me, they're going to form a main part of how I'm going to approach the river. So my ground bait is 3 parts marine green, which is a really, it's a ground bait with like crushed halibut pellet in, crushed normal coarse pellet. It's got some green, some special sort of green dye that we use as the marine element. So it's a very strong fish mealy ground bait. And to that, I've added 1/3 of a bag of sweet skimmer, which is a very caramelly, biscuity ground bait, because bream still love those things. And that's going to help me balance this ground bait nicely and get it working in the feeder really well. It's a mix that I've used for a long time on the river in terms of those ratios. So in the past I might have used say 50-50 green with 1/3 of sweet skimmer, or you know, like a match method mix and 1/3 of sweet skimmer. Anything like that's fine. Marine greens are a ground bait that we've been testing for the last year and it's been ever so great. So I'm happy to use that today. I love that dark green colour as well. It looks great. You'll notice I've mixed it on the dry side. So if I squeeze it in my hand there, it takes a real squeeze to actually squeeze it into a ball. You can see it already opening up. So when I sort of touch it, it just falls apart. And for me, I think that's really important when you're river fishing. You want a ground bait that is purely a holder of bait. It's literally going to nip into the feeder. It's got a long way to sink down. I want to make sure it gets all the way to the bottom. And then I want the water to act on this ground bait really fast and literally break it out of the feeder so my particles are ready to be left on the bottom when I wind in. That's really important for me, so I don't want to over wet my feeder. Don't forget the ingredients I'm going to add are going to add some dampness anyway, so I've got to be really, really cautious. Now, the bait tray is relatively straightforward. I've got some what I consider big fish baits. I've got some 4mm Fin Perfect coarse pellets. Now some people might say, why not halibut pellets? You're on the river. For me, I'm targeting bream. Everywhere I've been bream fishing, a coarse pellet is better than a halibut pellet. I think it keeps my options open for different things and it's not overly powerful. So I believe I can't really overdo it when it comes to coarse pellets. Therefore, I can be nice and aggressive with the feed and not worry about it too much. That's why I choose coarse pellets. I've got the best bream ground bait in history probably, well, it's arguable, the other one might be good, but corn. I would never go bream fishing without corn. And I've actually just blended a bit of corn up today as well, just for a bit of extra colour, sweetness, smell on the bottom, and I'll show you how we're going to use that. Then I've got some traditional river baits like casters. I've only brought a pint with me today because they're only going to be like a bit of a taster, and it's going to be a toss-up now. This is a better bream bait, I'm saying, the old worms. I would never go bream fishing without worms. They're just the best bream bait ever. So worms, corn, I've got all the baits that bream like, can't really fail. I've got a few maggots here for the hook baits, and we'll talk about using them. Very unlikely I'm going to feed them. Now, when we've done river features in the past, we've started off by casting in nice and regularly. We've been quite busy striking at bites, trying to get indications in the peg. So we're going to do things a little bit different today, and I'm going to show you how we're going to kick it off. So first of all, I'm going to get a nice pinch of worms, pop them in my tub, and just give them a bit of a coarse chop. I'm not going to chop them to a pulp. I'm literally just going to chop them into like, I'm going to say like, there shouldn't be anything less than like 1 centimetre, but nothing bigger than 1 inch. So once I've chopped these, I'll get them out for you to see. Look, I'm calling that quite a coarse chop. All right, you can see the worms there. There's like lots of bits of feed, lots of bits there that the fish can get involved with. So I'm going to pop them in my little tub there. And then I'm going to add a big handful of pellets. I'm actually going to put these in my bottom tub for now, because this is going to be an initial feed. So a big handful of pellets. I'm going to put a handful of corn. I'm going to put half a handful of casters, because I don't want loads of casters in there. And I'm going to put half a handful of the chopped corn. So once I stir this all around, you'll see this is a real sort of mixture of baits that bream love. Worms and casters, probably, I don't know, 25%. The other 3/4 is made up of pellets, corn, crushed corn. And that for me is what I want to be feeding. I want to be feeding the baits that only bream are going to eat, with samples of the worms and casters. Because what I don't want to do is drag, say, loads of eels or loads of dace or roach. I don't really want them in the peg today. I'm fishing for bream. It's an out and out bream attack. So what I've done is put on my large Preston open-ended feeder here in 50 grams. Okay, now this is my sort of baiting feeder, if you like. This is a large, notice it's a solid style. It's not the hex mesh, it's the solid style feeder, which is perfect for rivers because it's really deep here and I need to get all the bait right down to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is scoop the bait into this solid feeder, like I'm going to say 3/4 full. All right, and then I'm just going to use this dry ground bait to pinch that mix into the feeder. Now once you've pinched that in, I'm going to cast that out to my spot. So just out in front of me, rod back. Notice how literally hardly had to cast that at all. Cast that out, brought my rod back to the side. As soon as that hits the bottom, like that, I'm going to wind down onto it, give it a couple of pulls and make sure I wind it back up. I can feel it's empty straight away, and the feeder is actually less likely to catch on than the bomb because it sort of pulls itself up. That's one. I'm going to feed at least 5 of those to kick the peg off. It's no different if you were going bream fishing on a big lake or something like that. You would put some bait in at the start. You wouldn't just start fishing. Now for me, I think this is really important. A lot of people on the river, they do enjoy sort of like starting fishing. Well, for me, I don't. I like to put these 5 quick feederfuls in when I'm bream fishing and almost say to the bream, come on lads, this is where I am. Don't forget, this is a big river. It needs lots of bait. It needs lots of aggression when you're fishing. It's not a venue where you want to be taking it lightly. So that's 3. Again, you'll notice everything I'm doing is the same. Chuck it out, bring it across so I'm in the same place every time. Nice accurate bed on the bottom. Really love, something I love doing. It's there, give it a couple of things. You can feel it empty, it's absolutely brilliant. You can feel the bait come out of the feeder straight away, you see. That time I thought the top was a little bit caught, so there's a little bit in the top still there. I could just feel that time, it doesn't quite feel the same. So that's why it's so important. You can almost like understand what's going on, how hard to nip or not to nip. I'm just going to nip that one a little bit more gentle. It was only the top that was still in, so it wasn't a problem. The bait still came out in the peg. Chuck that out. It's really important. What I don't want to happen is I don't want the bait coming out on the way down. I want the bait to come out on the bottom. That's very, very important for me. So like that, there you go. I can feel that pop out of there. Just wind my feeder nicely back into the top. So one more. The secret to this is not to overfill the feeder with particles. If you put too many particles in, you have to squeeze it all a bit too tight. And that's when you can get it just wedging in the feeder a little bit. So let's get that down to the bottom. Same again, look, so I've just built up a nice little bed there of bait on the bottom. Any bream that are in the area are sort of like coming to have a little investigate. Now, you may think, surely he's going to switch down to a smaller feeder. No chance. When you're bream fishing, you're fishing for big fish. You're going to want to be aggressive with bait. So I believe I don't want to be casting in every, say, 50 seconds like I usually do when I'm on a river. I want to be relatively regular, like 2 to 3 minute casts. But because I'm sort of slowing it all down a little bit, I want to have that slightly bigger feeder with plenty of bait every chuck. Now, I've brought with me today 2 types of hook length for fishing, both for size 12. First of all, I've got a great bream fishing hook. I've got the size 12 N30, pre-tied metre hook lengths to 0.15. These are my River Breaming hook lengths. I literally have some of these at home that I can just pick up because they're so easy to use, and with the rig I'm using, you'll see for bream fishing it's great. That's great, 0.15, 12 N30, that'd be really good. But I've told you already, bream, bigger bream in deep water, they're not hook and line shy, they're big positive fish that we need to be positive. So I've got a 12 N50. Now this is a big strong hook. It's on 0.17 power line, much stronger line. And what we'll do is we'll start off using the bigger, stronger hook, okay? And the reason we're going to do that is because we want to get any fish that we hook out of the peg. We don't want to be losing fish or anything like that. If I feel like there's a few fish there, but they're being a little bit finicky, that's when I'll drop down to that slightly lighter line and that slightly lighter hook. But to start with, to kick things off, I need the proper hook, the big hook, because these fish deserve that sort of respect because they're big and powerful fish. Now, I'm actually going to start with this on at a full metre. The water's very deep, it's relatively clear. The fish generally tend to sit down from your bait on a river, and your hook length on a still water would end up here. But on a river where it's flowing, the flow pushes the hook length as it falls and it ends up down from your feeder, which is perfect because the fish are going to attack your feeder from this way, and that's where they're going to come into the peg and start attacking your bait. So I'm going to start, what am I going to start with? I'm going to start with a worm. I don't think there's a better bait. And you'll see here literally a whole worm. I'm going to go in through the top, sort of thread it on a little bit, and I'm going to nip off only the bottom tiny piece. So I've literally got 3/4 of a worm on there. Look at that, super attractive, big visual bait. I'm going to go back into that mix that I've done. Got a little bit of that left. So just put that in that big feeder, chuck it in like this. And let's look at how this feeder sits on the bottom, because that's going to be really important. I'm going to talk to you about that now. So this is first cast of the day. You're literally watching how I would kick off any bream fishing session. I'll let that hit the bottom. Once it's hit the bottom, I'm going to bring my rod round onto the rod rest. So I've got a tip and butt rest here. I think that's really important. I don't like a bar when I'm river fishing. I personally like it in a little U. One, that means I can control the exact position of my rod every time. If I'm not happy with it, I can move my rod rest, I can adjust things and get to where I want to be. Okay, and then on the same down the bottom, I need that little butt rest, which can basically hold the butt of my rod in place, just stops it rising up or getting pulled out. So I'm settling in for my first cast, 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to have a few of these now at 2 to 3 minute intervals. Let's see what happens over the next 20 minutes or so, and then I'll come back to you and we'll talk some other great bream fishing tactics. Well, this is our first bite. It's not the big bream we were hoping for, but a great start. Probably like a pound skimmer, something like that. It's about 25 minutes into the session now, so I've had like little tips and taps, and I felt I might have even had a couple of like line indications, as if there was sort of fish settling down there. And then that time I had a lovely drop back. So it does go to show there's some fish there. So let's just have a chuck out with you guys there, and I'll just talk you through exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to put, what am I going to do here? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to top and tail a worm. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put half a worm on, cut it off, and then I'm going to put the other half on. So I've got like 2 big dangly bits of worm. Still got that big feeder on, because until I start seeing evidence of fish, I like to keep putting some bait in, to be perfectly honest. So I want to keep with that. I usually fish for an hour, I'd say, with that setup. So I've been building the bait the whole time, but I have been getting indications, little taps, little things that tell me there are fish down there, like, you know, could be perch or other fish, but that skimmer there is a good indication that we've got half a chance. Trying to keep my rod nice and high because it's so snaggy and close. I've had my feeder in rocks 2 or 3 times. You know, it's been, you know, it has been difficult to get the balance there with that. I've actually pushed about 2 meters further than where I started, because after the first couple of times it was hard to get my hook length and my feeder over this sort of rocky bed. This is what I was trying to tell you about managing your swim. But when you're bream fishing, it's a bit different to when I'm fishing for like dace and roach. So what I like to do is, generally speaking, that was a bit of a liner there. What I like to do, generally speaking, is I like to be really balanced with my feeder. I want my feeder to be holding that. Basically, if a small fish picks it up, it rattles it and it dislodges the feeder and creates slack line, because I've got this big bow, and I've talked about that in other videos. But when I'm bream fishing, I believe that you want your feeder to actually be a little bit heavier, like a tiny bit heavier than you actually need, because I don't want those things like liners there, or I don't want little fish to peck and dislodge the feeder. I want the feeder to be almost like wedged in place and not bounce back unless a significant fish dislodges it. I don't want like perch and roach or anything like that to dislodge my feeder. So I reckon I could probably get away with 30 grams, maybe even, you know, 40 to 30 grams here would be more. If I was fishing for small fish, I'd have started on a 30 gram and I'd have maybe moved to 40 if it didn't quite hold. But I've got a 50 gram feeder on, so I've got that little bit heavier feeder on, just so when I cast out, obviously it's deep here as well, but even if it wasn't, it goes down, it locks on the bottom, and I know that it's in place. So it's there is a few tips and taps there. I'll tell you what, there's all of a sudden there's signs of fish. What you don't want, or what I wouldn't really want, is like an overly heavy feeder, like a, say 70 or 80 grams, unless I was fishing for a barbel, because I do still want the feeder to dislodge, and I don't want to be playing a bream with a big heavy feeder on. I'm not going to turn down those pound skimmers either, really. A lot of indications there on the tip. This is really promising actually, because I had a couple of indications before I caught that one fish then, and then we've had 2 or 3, just another couple of taps. It's time to bring it in anyway, so you'll notice I keep the rod really high. I'm just trying to wind, make sure I get over all these snags, because they have been awkward. You know what we'll do this time? Put 2 worms on that time. Always like to change my hook bait. Let's have a look at my bait. It doesn't look like it's been in a fish's mouth or anything like that. I'm going to put 5 maggots on this time. See if they want to eat a maggoty bait. And don't forget what I said about maybe going on a lighter hook and that if you need to, but that's a little bit of a way off yet. We're only early into the session. I almost feel like the fish are just coming in and finding their feet at the moment. So let's put 5 red maggots on. Lovely hook bait. Keep this big feeder, stick with this big feeder just for an hour. So you know, we're probably like 40 minutes in. Little nip. You'll notice I keep everything nice and high when I chuck out on a river. I don't want to get snagged up on anything behind me. I tend to wind my feeder a bit closer to the tip than I would when I'm normal feeder fishing on a nice open lake. You know, river fishing is like that. It's wild. You've got to adapt to the surroundings. So, you know, you've got to. I might even put a shorter hook length on if I keep getting these liners and indications. Give that a try in a minute. Let's just see if we can. With you guys here, getting those indications again. My little bait stack's just starting to run out, so I might have to top him up again in a minute. Might do a few worms while I'm waiting for the big drop back bite. You know, those little taps could be from smaller fish, they could be liners from other fish, they could be, you know, it could be all sorts of things really. Again, I don't want to chop those worms too fine, so I'm just paying attention to what I'm doing there. Obviously not put off by the worms because I've had those indications and that there. And I always tend to start off with this generic mix. And, you know, for example, if maggots are a better hook bait, I might think about feeding a few more casters next time round. I'll sort of like, I'm not fixed in how I want to fish. Oh, 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 that's a good bite. Here we go. Yeah, that's more like it. I'm going to stand up nice and high. I'm standing up nice and high because it's obviously rocky. Oh, it's come off. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? I've heard it said no one likes to see that, so you can all stop laughing. What's happened to me there? Have I lost anything? No, it's just come off. So that's quite surprising. I was trying to keep the rod nice and high. Still didn't expect that to come off, but never mind. Let's have another chuck in. Come off. Oh dear. Well, I suppose once a year is all right, isn't it, to come off a fish? Is that right, Mr. Cameraman? Yeah, don't know why he's laughing. So let's do that again. Look, let's do that. That was a bream, that was, for definite. Nice, nice big head bangs. Not to worry. Gonna stick with that big feeder again. Didn't really get as many indications that time, to be fair, which is a positive sign that maybe I've got a good hook bait on. You know, it's obviously seen the hook bait straight away. Look, same again. Just gonna go straight in the same spot again. I lost it sort of like 5 or 6 meters back and a bit downstream, so I'm not too concerned it's gonna totally disrupt my peg or anything like that. Let's find out. It's very deep where I'm fishing out there. It's certainly 20 foot for at least. That was a great sign. You know, we're only sort of, like I say, 40-45 minutes in, so let's see if we can get a couple more on the board. Come on then, that looked like a good bite. Oh yes. Well, we're actually straight back in. So that's a very, very promising sign. This feels like one of those skimmers again, to be fair. It doesn't feel like a bream like the last one, but yeah, it is a slightly bigger skimmer this time. A great start to the session. Shows there's a lot of fish there. Shows I like the maggots, because I'll tell you what, that wasn't in long. That was not in long. Yeah, he's a little bit bigger than the previous skimmer. He's probably 1.5 pounds, this one. There he is, look. It's getting a bit wild. Wind's getting a bit wild. Nice fishing. Look at that. So, there we go. We're heading in the right direction. Like I said, that one before was definitely he's only just hooked as well. That one before was what I was after, one of the proper ones, but look, a very, very positive sign. Right, I'm just going to do another mix because I've just run out of mix. I'm going to put some worms, some corn, a few more casters this time because they're obviously eating the... I'm going to mix all those together like that. Because I'm not casting in quite as regularly as I was, I'm actually going to add my pellets as I go because I don't want the pellets to get all soft and mushy. So I've mixed the corn casters and that together there. 5 maggots again, why not? Went round, didn't it, hey? On the 12. Nice bit of bream slime on the line, look. Brilliant. Now we are talking. So I'm just going to drop my pellets in as I go. I'm just going to drop like 20 pellets on the top of the mix and sort of scoop the pellets in if you like, because I want the pellets to stay nice and hard. I don't want them to go too soft, and I'm not casting in quite as regularly as I was. So when I'm pre-baiting, that's really nice. What great, I mean, it's sort of windy and a bit more overcast now. It's great bream fishing conditions, and I can tell that they're there. You know, that was a really quick bite. Let's keep you guys with us because I think we've got a few here at the moment, which is really, really positive. Now it's sort of about, I don't want to overfeed them, but when I tell you now, it's very different to when we're on a still water and those fish can come and go. These fish are strong, muscly, aggressive fish, and they will literally come and clean your bait out in 2 seconds. So I personally think, because we're sort of waiting 2 to 3 minutes, I'll be very surprised if I even take this big feeder off today. Now we're talking. Oh dear. Come on, where's my clip? Where's my clip? There we go, got clip off. Well, this seems interesting, because this does not seem like a bream. That is fighting harder than any bream that I was expecting today. And the fact that it's probably gone about 20 yards down the river is very interesting. So I think we're into a barbel. Now, we've got a 17 power line on and a 12. We're in a very, very snaggy bit of the river here. A lot of trees and that on the inside, a lot of rocks on the inside. If I was fishing for barbel here, I've got to be totally honest and say that I would be fishing with much stronger line, minimum 021 power line, but probably 024 because of the snaggy nature of the peg. But barbel are big fish. Often the first run is important, and then we're sort of working back upstream. And then when the fish is under our feet, that's the chance when they go a bit crazy again. Sometimes when you can get broken again. So you've got to be careful then. But then apart from that, we'd just be unlucky if it finds itself into a snag. So what you can't do is try and bully a barbel. If you try to bully it when it's sort of under your feet, unfortunately you will end up the loser. So you almost have to accept the fact that if it finds a snag, there was nothing you could do about it. So whenever I'm playing one, I always just give the fish the respect it deserves. You know, these fish, they're big fish, they deserve that bit of respect. And you know, I wasn't expecting this to happen today, but sometimes if you're on a big wild river and there's loads of barbel in the River Trent, we're feeding baits, look there it goes again. We're feeding baits that could happen, it could happen with. You know, sometimes if they find you, they're the fish that you could catch, but my breaming on the River Trent video could turn into barbling on the River Trent at this rate. But again, I've got the back wind on, I've got the clutch set loose. Very, very rocky in here in the edge. You know, if the hook length touches a rock, it'll just part like that straight away. So I'm very nervous of sort of this sort of peg, but barbel are a big fish and they swim around. So, you know, if you can swim around off bottom a little bit, I'll have half a chance. Let's see how this battle progresses. So the crucial stage at the net. Is he going to come? There he is. What a fantastic fish to catch. One of my favourite fish to catch. Just goes to show that you never know what's going to happen on a river. There he is, look. Probably about £5, something like that. Could do with another turn of the reel really, but we've got him nonetheless. Well, he might be a bit bigger than that actually. Oh, yep, he is. Look at that. Look at that. So, breaming on the river doesn't always go to plan. Just get the hook out of him. And we'll show him before we give him a chance to recover and pop him back. But, you know, this is what wild river fishing's all about. Just going to keep him nicely over the net there. Look at that. I tell you what, he's probably about £7, I would say, by barbel standards. Something a bit exciting. Maybe bullied a few bream out. I'm going to give him a chance to recover in the landing net for a bit. We'll get him back and we'll see if we can catch either some more barbel or hopefully a few bream. So if there is a few big fish about, like barbel, then this is a nice little tip. I've got a line marker here. Now, you can put that line marker on, and I'm not, if you want to use your sticks, you can use your sticks. Obviously I've sticked up at the distance anyway, but if you look at my reel, I've actually got the bail arm off on the line clip, and the line is looped there underneath the line clip. Because I'm fishing on a river, obviously my line tightens up to where I'm fishing, and I want to fish to a clip because I want to be busy and I want to be casting in all the time. But by actually leaving my bail arm off like that, if now I get that dung and thudding barbel bite, and often when you're on your rod barbel fishing, you pick up and you get like 2 or 3 seconds before they go, and you know it's a barbel. But with your bail arm off, you can just literally flick the line off the line clip, and it gives you the best chance of obviously getting the fish out. Now obviously if you were permanently barbel fishing, you would fish with your clip off all the time, but I'm not barbel fishing today. A barbel, for me, that it looks like that barbel could be like a Brucey bonus, if you like. You know, obviously it's bream and some skimmers that we're trying to target. All like that. Oh, barbel. Well, I was hoping the bream would come in. I even put a full worm on that chuck because I thought, well, let's see if the fish, the skimmers and bream have turned onto worm. But our bream fishing video has turned into some river big fish, and that is what I love about river fishing, because I'm not on a noted barbel peg at all here today. It's not an area that is known for it. It's just an area that, you know, a deeper area that is good for bream. But it just goes to show that anything can be in your peg, live in there on these venues. And there is obviously a few barbel have come in and taken a big liking to what I've been doing. I can see my line marker about 10 meters away. So you can tell why it's so important to have that, and you can see on this big powerful run that this fish is going on. Just taking another 5 meters of line. You know, he's 15 meters more line, and he's probably, well, he's right downstream. So, you know, again, just keeping the rod high, keep the pressure on, and let's see what happens. I love a big fish battle. Here she comes. Another great battle. Oh, it's a good one this time. This is a big barbel. Look at that. Whoa! Unbelievable fishing. Unbelievable fishing. You know, come to the River Trent for some bream. And these have got in the act today. You cannot complain because they are my favourite fish. What an incredible fish. Look at that one. Oh, that's a big barbel. On light tackle, just took my time. And we've got him. Full dendrobina as well. That well-known barbel bait. He's probably eaten a few in his time, but rarely has he been caught on one. There we go. That fish is certainly bigger than the last one. Again, if you're, you know, if you're catching barbel on light tackle, you obviously go through quite a lot. Give them loads of respect, loads of time. Give them a chance to recover. I like to put them in my landing net in the water and just let them have a breather as long as they possibly can. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this one seems absolutely full of beans, to be fair. We'll let him recover quickly. We'll have a quick picture and pop him back. Cracking fish, absolutely cracking fish. Certainly not even far off double figures, that one. A real River Trent brute. Looks like the skimmers, or hopefully even a bream, are back. These, you know, after that barbel, it probably just took a little while for them to settle back down. A few liners, yeah, that's a bream. Beautiful, beautiful fishing. They're the fish that we've come for, these slightly better fish. There we go. You know, when you're fishing on these big rivers, you know, you've still got the heavy line and what have you on. You can see why when I'm having a barbel like that, but that is a, look at that. Cracking fish, really give a good account for themselves. And you can see why you have to be so positive. You have to be so, everything has to be geared up, all your bait, your line, your tackle, your feeders. This is big fish on big rivers. There is no place for anything but a big positive approach. What a beautiful way to conclude our day on the River Trent. This is a bream. We've had a few today, but bream, barbel, it just goes to show you never know. What started out as a bream feature, which you can see why it works so well, has turned into a real big fish bonanza on this incredible, incredible river. And I think you've seen today, or I like to think you've seen today, lovely balanced fishing tackle. You know, nothing too overly heavy, 40, 50 gram feeders, conventional baits, and I have had one of the best days fishing that I could possibly hope for on this fantastic, fantastic piece of water. Here she comes. A lovely bream. That, for me, is what big fish fishing on a river is all about. Let's hold her up. When you never know what's pulling the rod round. Hope you've really enjoyed it as much as I have.